With the release of Reckoning in Black Ops 6 Zombies, I thought this would be a great time to go through and rank every single DLC 4 map in Call of Duty Zombies history from the worst to the best. We have a total of 9 maps to go over here, including the non-Treyarch maps, so let's get right into it. In the number 9th spot in last place is going to be Moon from Black Ops 1. I know what you're thinking, I know what you're gonna say, just hear me out. I am very much aware of the fact that this is a hot take. I know this is an unpopular opinion. I'm totally aware that people love this map to death, and that's totally fine. I just don't like it. I actually don't like it at all. I think it's one of the worst maps ever made in Zombies. I have tried so hard to enjoy this map over the past 15 years. I have replayed it thousands upon thousands of times, even within the past week, just to try to feel something when playing this map. And the only thing I ever feel when playing this map is frustration, and not the good kind of frustration that motivates you to want to learn the map more and play it better. It's the type of frustration that makes you put down your controller and just turn off the console and not want to play that map again. But before we get into what I don't like about this map, there are quite a few things that I love about it and I genuinely think are some of the coolest features that we've ever seen in Zombies. First things first, the starting area of Area 51 is one of my favorite starting rooms of any Zombies map ever, because it just throws you into this area that doesn't even operate like a regular round-based map. Instead, you just get swarmed by hordes and hordes of zombies and hellhounds, and you have to get out of there through the teleporter as fast as you can in order to get to the actual spawn point of the Moon area of the map. But there is a Pack-a-Punch machine there and a perk, either Speed Cola or Juggernog, so if you stay there as long as you can and try to rack up points, you could possibly Pack-a-Punch your starting pistol or get a perk before you even get to round 1 of the map itself, which is a really cool system. It is so much fun to try and survive in Area 51 as long as you can, and of course there's no way to get more ammo, so you are pretty limited here, but that's kind of the point. They're trying to make it really hard for you to actually Pack-a-Punch your pistol on round 1, but it is doable. I've done it before. And of course, later in the map, you can come back to this location to Pack-a-Punch, and the map is just as hectic as it was when you first started there. And it's really fun to just camp there and try to kill as many zombies as possible, because like I said, it gets very, very hectic. On Black Ops 3's version of Moon, it is a lot easier to survive here because they put a Gobblegum machine in Area 51, so of course you could just pop a Gobblegum and pretty much make it a lot easier to survive there. And you also can spawn in with the RK5, assuming you've done all the Easter eggs before on Black Ops 3, which it is still fun to survive with that in mind, but it's not nearly as fun as it is in Black Ops 1 because it's just way too easy in Black Ops 3. Another thing I love about Moon is the wonder weapon, the Wave Gun. This is one of the coolest wonder weapons of all time, and especially when this map first came out, it was quite a wild concept for a wonder weapon where you have 2 different versions of it. The dual-wield version kind of acts as these little zap guns that almost feel like mini Wonder Waffs, which isn't as cool as the other ability, but it still works and it's definitely useful. But the other ability, when you put the 2 guns together, it basically microwaves the zombies, and it is so much fun. It's such a cool effect to see, just seeing the zombies float up, get all puffy, and explode. There's also a few map unique items on this map that are really fun to mess around with, including the QEDs, which is a piece of equipment you can get from the mystery box. And the QEDs honestly have like 1,000 different abilities, which is kind of insane to think about. Like nowadays with equipment, usually there's just one ability and that's about it. But the QEDs have so many different purposes. It's very weird though, because it randomly does an effect. It's not something you can necessarily choose. For example, it could randomly spawn a power-up, but again, this isn't something you can just make it do. It just randomly happens when you throw it. It of course has a lot of attacks as well, where it could damage zombies. It could also do nothing, which can be pretty annoying, but that happens. It can open a door for you. There's just so many different things it can do, and Black Ops 3's version added a bunch of other things that it can do as well. So it's a very unique piece of equipment that I would love to see return someday. It's kind of crazy that it's only ever been on Moon. There's also the Hacker, which is a really fun item to use on this map. It also has a lot of abilities, just like the QEDs. One of the main abilities is using it to stop the excavators from crushing down and blocking off a certain part of the map. You can hack doors, basically opening them for a cheaper price. You can re-roll the mystery box if you didn't like the item you got out of the mystery box. You can hack a mystery box spawn location that doesn't have the mystery box there, and you can make it come over there. Like, there's so many different things you can do with this that is pretty interesting. You could also remove your perks by hacking a perk you already have purchased, and it refunds your perk, which is an ability that we've only seen again in Infinite Warfare, but that was like a core mechanic in that game. But in Black Ops 1, it was only something you can do on Moon with the Hacker. You can also hack power-ups to change them to another item, but this does cost you a decent amount of points. The last positive I have for Moon is that the story is really good. This is probably one of the most interesting story-focused maps ever, especially how it ends with Richtofen's grand scheme coming to fruition. There's a lot of good story stuff here, so I'll definitely give the map credit there. But then, of course, we have to get to the negatives, and there's a lot of things, and most of these things are pretty bad and just ruin the map for me. First of all, I don't like the Easter egg whatsoever. I think it's actually one of the worst Easter eggs of all time. Now, to be fair, it is one of the first Easter eggs of all time, so I can give it some credit there. But I do not enjoy doing this Easter egg almost whatsoever, and the main reason for it is the heavy RNG required for it. Now, a little bit of RNG here or there is fine. That is totally okay. But I don't like an Easter egg that requires me to get 3 different items out of the mystery box. And one of the items is the Gersh device, which you have to get first. And then you have to get the QEDs after, which replaces your Gersh device. Then you have to get the Gersh device again after you use the QEDs for a step. So unless you're playing co-op and you're doing this solo, which you can actually do it solo in Black Ops 3, you have to go between those pieces of equipment a couple times. And it's just quite a frustrating process because obviously you're not guaranteed those out of the mystery box. You also need the wave gun out of the mystery box. And you have to deal with the RNG of the excavators, which could definitely go your way or could not go your way. It really just depends on how the RNG is feeling that day. And I don't enjoy it whatsoever. I think the process of it is quite frustrating. Of course, the end of the Easter egg where you see Earth get exploded by the missiles that you launch, that is a really cool final little moment of the Easter egg. But again, that is all story related. I think the story of this map is pretty good, but the gameplay side of this Easter egg kind of sucks. I like the Simon Says step though. That's the only part of the Easter egg that I think is pretty good. The one step where you're filling up zombie souls is fine as well, but the majority of the Easter egg I think is just unfun. And of course, again, it's one of the first Easter eggs, so I didn't expect a lot out of it, but it's just not an Easter egg that I enjoy doing whatsoever. Going back to the excavators, I think this is one of the worst map features of all time, where you have these giant things that just crush a specific section of the map and make it so you can't get to the other side of the map through that path, which wouldn't be the end of the world if it lifted itself up after a certain point, but it doesn't. The only way to get it to lift up is if you get the hacker and you hack into the device in the spawn room in order to lift it up. And if both excavators come down and you're on the spawn section of the map, you physically cannot get to the other side of the map whatsoever. It's just impossible. That game is over for you unless you're playing in Black Ops 3 and you use it anywhere but here. But other than that, there's really no way to get over there, especially on the original version of the map. And I just don't think a round-based map should have a game over mechanic like that just as a map feature. Maybe if it's some sort of Easter egg related thing, that's different, but I just don't think it should require players to do something like that in order to save the game for themselves. It should be more about just the actual survival. Can you survive against the zombies? Rather, can you get to the other side of the map in time to get the hacker, bring it all the way back, and make sure you can lift up the excavators in time so you avoid getting cut off on the other side of the map. Now, it's not like it's impossible to avoid this. I don't usually get in this situation, but it's just the fact that I have to stop what I'm doing, go all the way to get the hacker and bring it all the way to the spawn room. It's just not a fun process, and it's something you have to do quite often, I feel like. And this wouldn't be a problem if the hacking device was very accessible, but it's really not. You have to get it from one specific part of the map, and whenever you put your astronaut suit back on, the hacking device goes away, and it goes back to the original place you got it from, or at least one of those original locations. And you can't frequently deal with not having an astronaut suit because most of the map requires an astronaut suit or you will suffocate and die. On one hand, I could respect the fact that this map does require a lot of management of making sure certain areas stay secure. You don't use explosives, so you destroy the air pressure and it makes it so you need a suit for that area. Like, I can respect some of these concepts and ideas, and I do like that it is challenging. My issue is not that the map is challenging though. My issue is that the type of challenge it presents is just not fun to deal with. Another example of a challenge on this map that I don't think is fun to deal with is the astronaut zombie, one of the most annoying special enemies of all time. This guy just walks around all quietly. He's very, very quiet. You cannot hear him whatsoever. And if you run into him, he will grab you, headbutt you, teleport you across the map, and steal one of your perks, which is quite easily one of the most annoying mechanics of all time, especially because he could spawn in front of you. There has been many times where I've been playing, I'm just running straight, and then he just spawns right in front of me and grabs me. It's like there's nothing I could have done about that. Obviously, sometimes you walk around a corner and he does it as well. That I guess you could have managed if you went around the corner a bit slower, but there's just nothing you can do. Once he grabs you, it's game over, and unless you, of course, kill him before he can do it, but if you have a weaker gun at that point, you're not going to kill him before he's able to headbutt you. I also really don't like the layout of this map. I don't think it's horrible necessarily, but it's a very, very big map in a way that I don't think has enough paths of getting around quickly. So if you're on one side of the map and your friend is on the complete opposite side of the map and they go down, you are not reviving them. It is very, very difficult to get across this map in a short amount of time. And honestly, the low gravity doesn't help whatsoever. It makes it so it's very hard to get around. It's very hard to control your player. And look, I enjoy that unique element to this map. Obviously, you're on the moon. It makes sense that they would have low gravity as a feature. I like that quite a bit. They returned low gravity on Reckoning, and I think it's pretty cool. It's just one little section of the map. But having such a significant aspect of this map be low gravity, and you really cannot control how you move in the low gravity whatsoever. Like, it's very hard to control yourself. Very frequently do I just get basically pushed into a horde of zombies, and you just can't really do much about it all because I decided to jump while I was running, and it's just completely kills your train. And again, it's a challenge, but a challenge that I don't really find to be fun. I also think the map is visually very, very boring. It's so gray, so gross to look at. It's understandable. You're on the moon. Why wouldn't it be? But I just think it's not that appealing. Black Ops 3's moon looks 100 times better, so that did make me enjoy moon a lot more in retrospect when I'm playing that version of it, but the original version just doesn't look very good. I also do want to make it clear that Black Ops 3's version of Moon does fix a lot of the problems I talked about in this video. It doesn't fix all of the problems, but it definitely does help make those problems not as bad. But it is weird because although I don't enjoy the challenge that Moon presents, I do think Black Ops 3's Moon makes the map a little bit too easy in other places, and I feel like there needs to be a middle ground there where it still is very challenging, but in a fun way. And I feel like a lot of other Black Ops 1 maps do that better. I think Shangri-La is a pretty challenging map, but it's in a way that I find to be way more fun. I just don't really find Moon's challenge to be fun. All in all, I can understand why people love Moon, but personally, it just doesn't do it for me. Maybe one day I'll like this map, but that day is not today. Before we get into the rest of the video, I'd like to show off these really cool Call of Duty Zombies themed KontrolFreek thumbsticks that will help your accuracy in Call of Duty, but are also just incredibly comfortable and look amazing. And they even come with a Speed Cola and Deadshot Daiquiri perk can, which is so cool. The Speed Cola edition will also give you a digital code for an in-game cosmetic weapon charm in Black Ops 6 Zombies. Use code XpertFusion at the link in the description for 12% off on this and any other KontrolFreek products. Now let's get back to the video. In number 8 spot, Descent from Exozombies. This map unfortunately suffers a very similar fate to Carrier, where I feel like the map itself is actually not that bad. There's some pretty cool aspects to the map, but ultimately it has the Exozombies mechanics, which are by far the worst mechanics in the Zombies franchise. Therefore, it holds the map back quite substantially. Let's start off with some of the positives about this map though. One of the things I love is how unique the wonder weapon is. Now, it's not that great of a wonder weapon, I'll be honest, but it is really unique. It's called a Trident, and it's this weapon that shoots this blue orb that just bounces off the walls and can keep hitting the zombies again and again as it bounces off the walls. I am a firm believer that a unique wonder weapon is always going to be more preferred over a really, really powerful wonder weapon. Obviously, I would prefer it unique and powerful, but I'd rather see one that's very, very unique but not that great over one that's very, very good but not unique. And the concept of a wonder weapon that shoots orbs that bounces off walls, of course, is very unique. There's never been anything like that in Zombies before, and it is really fun to just spam this thing all around and just seeing all the different orbs cutting through the zombies one by one. It's a really, really cool weapon. This is also the first Zombies map to have a boss fight, and interestingly enough, it wasn't even connected to the main Easter egg. It was instead just a core part of the experience. When you reach round 20, you have to fight Oz as this giant monster, which is pretty cool. It's not like the best boss fight ever. Obviously, it was the first time they've ever done it, but it is still pretty fun, and I actually don't mind the fact that it's required of the player. You just have to do it once you reach round 20, because like I said, it's kind of fun to do, so I don't mind having to do it every single time I play this map. There's also this one thing you have to do on round 13 where you are teleported to that same boss arena, but it's instead more of a challenge lockdown thing where you just have to survive in there as long as you can against a bunch of zombies. Overall, it's not that hard to survive for both of these challenges, but I do enjoy the fact that this is our first boss fight ever, and you have to give the map credit for doing that. As for the Easter egg, it is by far the best Easter egg in Exozombies without a doubt. There's only one step in it that absolutely sucks and is painful to get through, and that's the step where you have to let EMZs hit you to charge up the battery. Now, this step wouldn't be so bad if you only had to let a couple EMZs hit you for this, but you have to do it for over 10 different EMZs, which is not a very simple task, and it's not like fun to do whatsoever, so I just don't enjoy the step. But once you get past that, the rest of the Easter egg is really fun. There are so many different challenges that are so interesting, like for example the grenade challenge that just gives you unlimited grenades, and you just have to survive with unlimited grenades. That's all you can use though, you can't use any other weapons. It's really fun to just use nothing but contact grenades for a whole round. I enjoy that quite a bit. There's also the jump puzzle, which is probably one of my favorite steps in the zombies history, where you have to do these various parkour courses with your exosuit. And I really enjoy it because it's actually finding a way to utilize the exosuit movement in an Easter egg step in a really interesting way. It kind of reminds me of the free run mode in Black Ops 3, but it's part of the zombies map itself as an Easter egg step. And it's so much fun. You can do it without zombies hitting you. You can just enjoy the jump puzzles. And I think it's really cool. There's also a step where a bunch of bots will spawn in and they'll start trying to shoot you, which of course, if you're playing with other teammates, this works very differently. But on solo, it's kind of crazy to have to avoid getting shot by other bots that just get spawned into your lobby. You can't kill them though, so you just have to avoid them. And I think it's quite a fun step. And then of course the final lockdown step is also pretty fun. It's overall a really good Easter egg, and I would say the only Easter egg in this game that I genuinely think is deserving of being called a good Easter egg. But unfortunately, as I mentioned before, the Exozombies mechanics really do hold back this map. I don't like the Pack-a-Punch system. I don't like the EMZs. A lot of the special enemies are quite annoying. Even the infected zombies return on those special rounds, and they're just not fun to deal with. The game overall feels kind of clunky past a certain point. I think the early rounds are actually kind of fun, but once you get to a certain round, I really just don't have a good time playing it. But it's definitely one of the best maps in Exozombies. I would say it's about tied with Carrier. Sometimes I prefer Carrier, sometimes I prefer Descent, kind of just depends on the day of the week. It's definitely the most visually interesting map out of all the Exozombies maps, so I would say if you're going to play Exozombies and you want to give any map a shot, this is probably the best map to try out. I also think the double feature hardcore mode is pretty cool, which you can unlock after doing the Easter egg. Definitely not a mode that I would play most of the time, but it is pretty interesting how much harder it makes the game. In the number 7th spot, the Beast from Beyond from Infinite Warfare. Again, I know what you're thinking, but you gotta hear me out on this one. The Beast from Beyond is not that great of a map. The map itself, yeah, it's got a lot of issues, and we'll talk about all those in just a second. But there's one massive, incredible element to this map that, in my opinion, is one of the best things Call of Duty Zombies has ever done. Possibly the best thing, and that is, of course, the Mephistopheles boss fight. A lot of people will argue that Mephistopheles should be counted as a separate map or a separate experience than the Beast from Beyond, and you're totally allowed to do that if that's what you want to do, but I just personally don't think that's fair to the Beast from Beyond experience, because it is part of the map. Of course, you have to do the super Easter egg to unlock this boss fight, and you have to be playing the Beast from Beyond in Director's Cut mode, but it still is part of the map. So if I think that boss fight is incredible, it's going to make the Beast from Beyond a better map to me. It's like watching a really bad movie where suddenly the last 20 minutes of the film becomes some of the best stuff you've seen in cinema ever. And of course, you're not going to just forget about all of the bad parts in the earlier sections of the movie, but of course that amazing final 20 minutes of the film is going to make it so you don't hate the movie as much as you did before, because you're coming out of the movie thinking to yourself, you know what, that was worth it. Those 20 minutes were some of the best stuff I've ever seen in cinema, so it really doesn't matter that the majority of the movie isn't as great as I was hoping it to be. And that's how I feel about The Beast from Beyond. Yes, of course, it's not a great map, there are so many issues with it, but Mephistopheles is just that good. I cannot consider this one of the worst maps of all time. Mephistopheles is such a great boss fight because of how much you have to actually learn from it. It's not about bringing in the right loadout. Of course, there are certain weapons that are much better than others. If you bring in the Mauler Sentinel and the Venom X, of course, it's going to make it a lot easier because those are some of the best weapons to use for the boss fight. But even with having the best possible loadout, the best perks, the best Fate and Fortune cards, you still need to really learn all of the attacks from Mephistopheles. All of his attacks are what matters more than anything. You need to learn what each attack means, what is the best way to dodge that attack, because it's quite different for each attack, and sometimes you wouldn't know what that method is before learning it. Like, for example, the black hole attack he does, the best way to avoid that attack is actually to go prone. You probably wouldn't think that normally playing it, you'd probably think running away is the best way to do it, but once you learn that going prone is the best way to avoid getting killed by the black hole, it becomes an attack that is not as hard to deal with. And there's a lot of other attacks like that. His fire tornadoes are probably his most deadly attacks that honestly, even and to this day, I am very bad at trying to avoid, but it's so much fun. It is the perfect amount of challenging. I would say it's probably the hardest boss fight in Zombies history, but because of how skill-based it is, there's always ways to learn how to do it better. And it's one of those boss fights that you really can just grind it. You can just keep on practicing it. Of course, because there is a boss battle mode in Infinite Warfare, you don't even have to do the full Easter egg of Beast from Beyond to try out this boss fight. But I really do think this is the perfect template for what a boss fight should be in Zombies. Crazy enough, this map also has another boss fight against the Mammoths, and I would say it's a great example of how not to do a boss fight in Zombies. It's so crazy how this map has one of the best boss fights ever and one of the worst. The reason I don't like the Mammoth boss fight is because it's just a giant bullet sponge. Of course, you have two different mammoths, and both of them have a ridiculous amount of health. And I wouldn't say the boss is challenging in an interesting way like Mephistopheles is. It's kind of challenging in just an annoying way. Just constantly running around in circles, just putting as much damage into both of the mammoths as you possibly can to try and finally kill them. It's just not that interesting. And the boss fight itself also just doesn't have any music, which, I mean, a lot of Infinite Warfare maps don't have music with their boss fights, but the arena itself also isn't interesting. So there's just not much to it that excites me. It's kind of just like the appetizer to finally get to the Mephistopheles fight itself, but the appetizer is kind of just annoying to get through. It's like having a giant plate of nachos that you have to finish before getting to your main meal, and the nachos just aren't that good, so you don't want to sit there and eat all of them. I personally did enjoy the idea of them bringing all of this extinction stuff over to Zombies. I know a lot of people didn't like that, but I think most of those complaints were coming from a story perspective because they basically turned the entire Extinction story into a Willard Wyler movie into Infinite Warfare. And I can understand why story people wouldn't be happy about that, but at the end of the day, it's all fiction, and just because they're saying that that story was always fiction doesn't necessarily mean it has to be in your mind. You can still go play Extinction, and it could still be its own story there without Infinite Warfare's map making any sort of difference to it. But like I said, I can understand why that still frustrated people who are big fans of Extinction, but I liked it because they weren't going to bring back Extinction anyways, so it's kind of cool to see a lot of those different enemies return into Zombies. And honestly, I think most of it worked better than people give it credit for. Now, some of the bosses don't mesh well at all, but that's just because they decided to throw in a bunch of special enemies from other Infinite Warfare maps into Beast from Beyond, which to this day I don't get why. You could have just kept the Extinction theme for the map, and I think it would have worked 10 times better, but they felt the need to throw in ninja zombies, the slasher, the clowns. And look, I love some of those bosses. I love the slasher, I love the clowns, but they work better on the maps they were on. Why do they have to be on Beast from Beyond? They don't even make a lot of sense on Beast from Beyond because you're on a space station. Like, it just doesn't look right. Now, of course, you can teleport to the theater, and they do make more sense at the theater. I think it would have been kind of cool if those special enemies could only spawn at the theater, and maybe the aliens can't spawn at the theater, but then make it so the aliens do spawn when you're at the space station. I think that would have worked way better and would have made for an interesting contrast between those two sections of the map, but they didn't do that. They just shove all the special enemies onto every area of the map, and it gets really hectic in the later rounds, not in a good way. A lot of the bosses kind of contradict each other when it comes to how you're supposed to avoid getting killed by them. Like, for example, with the ninja zombies, you're not supposed to run really fast away from the ninja zombies. That's how you get killed by them. But a lot of the other special enemies on this map require you to run. So when you have multiple of these bosses coming at you at once, it just becomes very frustrating to deal with unless you have the Kendalls and you just spam the floor. But again, it just makes the strategies for this map quite uninteresting. And so I don't think the bosses worked on this map at all. This ends up making high rounding kind of painful on this map, but I also don't really like the Easter egg either. It's quite a simple Easter egg. It's really short and not really that fun, but of course it leads to Mephistopheles, so it's worth it for that. But I think every part before, it's just not that interesting, and definitely some of the weakest Easter egg steps out of any map from Infinite Warfare. The Venom X Wonder Weapon returns from Extinction, and obviously if you're going to be bringing back all these Extinction special enemies, it makes a lot of sense to also bring back the Wonder Weapon from that game, and I thought it was pretty cool. I actually really enjoy using the Venom X in this game. Of course, you only really get to enjoy it in Director's Cut because good luck trying to get this thing without Director's Cut. You have to do this really painful side Easter egg in order to get it, and it's probably one of the hardest side quests of all time that genuinely to this day I think I've probably done once. It's just very long and very difficult. And I like complex stuff. I am a big fan of complex stuff in Zombies, but there has to be fun to the complex stuff, and I just don't think this specific quest was that fun. And so this is obviously why this map is just so much better with Director's Cut on. I don't really feel that way about a lot of the other Infinite Warfare maps. I feel like Director's Cut versus not having Director's Cut is just as fun. But with this map, not having Director's Cut is not nearly as enjoyable as it could be with Director's Cut on. Director's Cut also makes the opening part of this map not nearly as big of a problem. I'm actually one who doesn't have an issue with how this map opens up. Of course, you have nothing but cryptids spawning in, and it's very hard to deal with them. It's a very difficult opening, but I actually think it's kind of cool. I think it's an interesting challenge to give to the player. But they made it a little bit too hard to figure out how to get power on, so it makes it so unless you look up a guide, you're probably not going to figure out how to do that on one of your first attempts, and it's really hard to figure out how to do that while you're having these cryptids coming at you. So I think they probably should have made the power a bit of a more simple process on this map, just to balance with how challenging it is to deal with the cryptids in those early rounds. But like I said, Director's Cut makes this 10 times easier and not really a problem whatsoever. When it comes to the Ghost and Skulls quest on this map, it's called Skullbreaker, and I actually think it's one of the better Ghost and Skulls quests in this game, surprisingly. Some of the steps are pretty fun to do, and I enjoy the final game for this map. It's not nearly as challenging as some of the other ones, but it's pretty fun. I think one of my biggest issues with this map is compared to the other Infinite Warfare maps, there isn't nearly as much content to it. When you actually walk around the map and you want to like actually interact with stuff, there's really not much to do. There's obviously the Easter egg, Ghosts and Skulls, and the side Easter eggs, but like that's about it. Like the other Infinite Warfare maps have all these buildables, mini games, music that plays in different sections of the maps, like all these different things, whereas this map has none of that. There's literally nothing to do. There's no buildables at all, pretty much. It's just devoid of content, which makes the map get boring much quicker than the other Infinite Warfare maps. I will say though, I kind of enjoy the visuals of this map and the aesthetic, especially the outside section of the space station. When you're actually on that planet itself, it has this really cool icy, snowy texture to it, and I actually enjoy just hanging out there and killing zombies. It's pretty cool. In number 6 spot, Forsaken from Black Ops Cold War. We are now getting to the maps that I would consider to be pretty decent maps. Forsaken is enjoyable, but I do think it is quite underwhelming for DLC 4. Let's start off with some of the positives though. I do really enjoy the spawn area of this map because it is quite similar to Moon, where a bunch of zombies just start swarming you, and the rounds actually do work here, unlike with Moon where there is no rounds that go by, so you can actually just stay in the spawn room as long as you want. Of course, there's not too many things in that spawn area to purchase, so at a certain point you are going to have to move on to the next area, but you can stay there to just rack up points, and usually I'll do that, where I'll stay there till like round 10, get as many points as possible, so that when I go to the next area, I can just open up all the map on round 10, which is pretty interesting. I don't think it's nearly as fun as the spawn area of Moon, because obviously Moon had a very challenging aspect to it, whereas I feel like the spawn area on Forsaken is really not that challenging to survive in because it's in Black Ops Cold War, and Black Ops Cold War is quite easy. Another good thing about this map is the Chrysalax Wonder Weapon, probably one of the best wonder weapons of all time, and it is really fun to use. It's a weapon that can turn into a full auto pistol that is very, very powerful, but you can also turn it into an axe, and it's like made out of these dark ether crystals, and it is so powerful, probably the best in this game, and it's insanely good for getting to high rounds. It's fun to use as well. Like I said before, it's not just about how powerful the wonder weapon is, but it's also about how unique and fun is it to use, and I think this weapon pretty much nails all aspects of that. Cold War as a whole didn't have a lot of side Easter eggs on their maps, which was quite disappointing, but Forsaken was the only map in the game that actually had a few side Easter eggs that were pretty decent. I wouldn't say they were amazing, but they were definitely better than the other Cold War side Easter eggs. You had an RCXD racing side Easter egg that was pretty fun, kind of a precursor to the boat racing Easter egg that we see on Terminus in Black Ops 6. There's a Perk-a-Holic side quest that requires you to do Simon Says and a couple other things, and you get a free Perk-a-Holic. And there's also the arcade games, which honestly, compared to Zombies in Spaceland, this arcade is quite disappointing, but it still exists, and there's a couple different games you can play. There's one game that teleports you to Nocturne Unknown and has you survive there for a little bit. There's another game that has you complete this Dragon Soulbox challenge that was taken straight from Outbreak. It's definitely not the best stuff ever, but it's better than nothing. And although there's a big issue with the map location itself, there is one aspect of it that I really like, and that is just the overall style and theme of the place, which of course is a Soviet training facility that is themed to look like an American town. It was obviously in the Black Ops Cold War campaign, and to be honest, after I played that mission in the campaign, I really did want this to come into Zombies as a map. But the problem is the way they did it was pretty horrible, because instead of actually designing this to fit well with zombies, they just kind of copy and pasted it from campaign, threw it into zombies, and then threw in a bunch of teleporters and zip lines to allow players to get from location to location. This just did not work whatsoever. The layout of this map is probably one of the worst layouts of any zombies map ever. It's not hard to get around the map, it's just so underwhelming to just travel to so many different locations by constantly using teleporters and zip lines, all for areas that are pretty close to each other. It's not like you're teleporting across the country or something, so you need teleporters. You don't need teleporters. They could have just made these areas connected, but it's very likely they just didn't have the development time for that, so they had to just quickly throw teleporters in and have that be the way you get from location to location. This map overall just feels very underwhelming, especially for a DLC 4. The Easter egg is probably one of the easiest Easter eggs of all time, including the boss fight. It is so ridiculously easy, and that obviously isn't something you want for the final map in your game. The final map should be challenging. It should put players to the test. If you're going to have easy Easter eggs, those should be the launch maps or DLC 1. You should not be saving your final map in the game as by far one of the easiest Easter eggs of all time. That just is not right. It's a very quick Easter egg. It goes by so fast, and like I said, it's very underwhelming. And of course, the modern zombies mechanics are always going to bring down a lot of these maps for me. I know people don't like when I say that. They're like, what are you talking about? They're great. I just don't enjoy them. I think they make the game too easy. It kind of takes away the charm of zombies. I don't like the point system in this game. I don't like the loadout system. There's various things I just don't like about modern zombies that does hold back some of the maps a little bit. But Forsaken is always going to be a map that I think is enjoyable to play. I don't think it's nearly as bad as people say. A lot of people say it's the worst map in Black Ops Cold War. I personally like it more than D Machine and Firebase C. I don't like it more than Mauer Tone, of course, but I do think it is not nearly as bad as people say. But it's definitely not a great map. I think it's definitely a map I would consider to be sort of average. In the number 5 spot, Reckoning from Black Ops 6. Overall, I do think this is a pretty good map. It's not perfect. There are quite a few issues with it that are consistent with a lot of the Black Ops 6 Zombies maps, but I do enjoy this map. I think it definitely deserves to be called a good map, but I do think it's a little frustrating that so many Black Ops 6 Zombies maps sit in this same sort of area of just being a good map, but it's not amazing. It doesn't get to that next level of being a masterpiece, one of the best of all time, and I feel like a lot of these maps could be that, but there's just a few things that hold them back. I don't think Reckoning is one of the worst maps of Black Ops 6, and I wouldn't say it's one of the best maps either. It's kind of just right in the middle. Starting off with some of the positives, Uber Klaus and Commando Klaus are some of my favorite special enemies that the modern zombies era has brought us, especially with Uber Klaus. I think he is really fun to fight against in a way that's challenging but not annoying, because obviously you have bosses like the Amalgam that are pretty hard to fight against in some of the other Black Ops 6 maps, but the Amalgam is very annoying to go up against, whereas I feel like Uber Klaus doesn't feel annoying to fight. He's just challenging and actually a really good time. Commando Klaus works very similarly to the toxic zombies on Shattered Veil, where they just run at you and explode, and sometimes they'll be all in like a single file line just coming right at you one at a time. They're actually pretty hard sometimes, but they're fun. I don't think they're annoying whatsoever. I really do like the layout of this map. The verticality is pretty interesting. Do I think they could have done a lot more with it? Sure, but I do like the idea of having a map that is very, very vertical, and there's even one section where you can quite literally jump off of it and parachute all the way down to the bottom. That element is pretty cool. I especially like the little Mr. Peaks free perk side Easter egg that you can do with the parachuting off of that tower. I really like the anti-gravity room on this map, of course that being the Pack-a-Punch room. It's just a little feature on this map that sets it apart from some of the other maps. I always love coming in this area just to train around or camp, because it is really fun to try and survive with the anti-gravity being enabled. The main Easter egg is decent. I think it's pretty much on par with all of the Black Ops 6 Easter eggs. I don't think it's like one of the best of all time, but it's definitely decent. And it all leads to a really interesting choice you get to make at the very end of the game, where you can choose to either help Sam or Richtofen, which leads you into two completely different boss fights depending on which choice you make. The Sam boss fight is pretty decent. I wouldn't say it's fantastic. It's pretty easy, but it's pretty cool getting to fight Sam on the roof of one of the towers. And then of course you have the Richtofen boss fight, which is probably one of the hardest boss fights of all time. The first phase of it is not that bad when he's Uber Richtofen himself, but when he gets out of the suit and he's just with the jetpack, he is so difficult to fight against, and I think there's a couple elements to it that I don't love. I love how challenging it is, but there was way too many times where I played and he practically one-shot me with his Wunderwaffe even though I had Juggernog. I just don't think that's a fair attack whatsoever, but I do like how challenging it is. I like that they have this really challenging boss fight that you don't have to do to complete the Easter egg. You can do the easier one if you want. I do like that they gave players the choice to do either the easier one or the harder one. What I don't like is that they didn't give you a better reward for beating the harder one. It would make sense if they gave you like an exclusive camo or something for beating the Richtofen boss fight, because there's no reason why you should get the same rewards for beating that as you do for beating the Sam boss fight. Something I like and dislike about this map is the Ether Blade, because on one hand, I was so happy to see the Ether Blade being added into Black Ops 6 Zombies after it was introduced in Modern Warfare 3 Zombies last year. I thought it would be a great side Easter egg reward, so I was very happy to see that Reckoning was going to be bringing it back. But unfortunately, the quest to getting it, and honestly the Ether Blade itself, is not nearly as good as it should be. First of all, the quest to get it was time gated until they added the Mr. Peaks field upgrade, which was quite frustrating because people knew how to do the side quest before they even added the Mr. Peaks field upgrade officially to the game. So we had to wait a couple weeks to actually be able to get it. But the quest itself also just isn't that interesting to me. You just have to get 3 paintings, place them in positions on a wall in a room, blow up a crystal with the RCXD, get a key, and then defeat a special enemy. It's, I believe, usually a disciple, and then after you defeat it, you get the Ether Blade. And also, only one player in your match can get the Ether Blade. So if you are playing with multiple players, one of them is going to have to do it, which is really weird to me because the Golden Armor quest on the tomb lets everyone get the Golden Armor, so why can't everyone get the Ether Blade? I don't know. It's not like the Ether Blade is too powerful that it makes it so it would be, too overpowered for everyone to have it, because it's really not that powerful. It only can kill 3 zombies at a time. Now, I know it was like that in Modern Warfare 3 Zombies, but honestly, for the sake of round-based, I thought they were going to buff it a little bit, but it's honestly not that strong. I still like it though. I'm glad they brought it back. Therefore, I'm kind of counting this as a positive and a negative for the map. It is fun to use. There's also the little side Easter egg where you can get the Aetherella toy to follow you around and kill zombies, which is pretty cool, but it's really not that amazing of a side Easter egg, but definitely one that I have fun doing nonetheless. One of my biggest issues with this map is the Gorgofex Wonder Weapon. Now, to be honest, I don't think it's nearly as bad as I thought it was when I first played this map. I had a lot of negative things to say about it, but honestly, it's pretty decent. Like, it can kill zombies pretty effectively. It's perfectly fine in the high rounds. It's just not nearly as good as some of the other Wonder Weapons in this game. But I just don't enjoy using it. I really just don't find it to be that fun of a Wonder Weapon. It doesn't feel like that unique of a concept. It looks really cool visually. It's amazing, but I honestly just don't find the Wonder Weapon to be that fun. I also don't like the fact that you can't get both variants in the same match. Of course, you kind of can. If you do one of the variants, you can get the other one out of the mystery box, but you can't do both variant quests in the same match, and I wish you could. Even if it maybe doesn't make sense for the story, I don't really care. I do wish you can do both of them, and you can just like swap between them like you can with most other variants in Call of Duty Zombies. And of course, my biggest issue with any Black Ops 6 Zombies map is that I just don't really like the modern Zombies mechanics that we see in this map. The point system, the loadout system, how score streaks work, salvage, all that stuff I do think holds back this map a bit. It makes it feel a little bit too streamlined, especially compared to the other maps in the game, which makes it not stand out as much, and I also think the early rounds are just quite repetitive and not as fun as they were in some of the older games. It's unfortunate that this has been a consistent problem with pretty much all Zombies maps in the modern era for me, and I really hope that Black Ops 7 can fix it. In the number 4 spot, Tog der Toten from Black Ops 4. This is a map that a lot of people consider to be underwhelming, and I can totally understand why, because it is the final map in the Ether storyline. At least the first, chapter of it. I guess the Dark Ether storyline is kind of continuing the Ether storyline in a sense. But especially at the time, a lot of people didn't even know if any of these characters were going to continue. We all thought this was the end of the story for good. So of course there was a lot of pressure on this map, and the fact that we were going back to the Call of the Dead location, that Siberian facility, and people felt weird about that. They thought the final map should have been some big, grand scale, Great War style map. I don't entirely disagree. I think it would have been cool to have something really big and grand scale as the final experience, but at the same time, they did a great job with the story they were trying to tell in this map, and I actually think story-wise, this ending is fantastic. It's not even just the way they end the story and how beautiful and touching it was, but also the amount of lore they added to the Ether storyline as a whole. This map was basically used to just tie up loose ends for previous maps, which I thought was pretty interesting the way they did that. Beyond just the story, I do think the map plays pretty well. It's a really big map. Call of the Dead was already pretty huge, but this map of course adds that facility that you can zipline to and a whole other section behind the lighthouse, so there's a lot more areas to explore, and genuinely I think this is one of the biggest zombies maps of all time. The visuals are stunning, the way the sunset looks against the snow and you see all the snow melting. It's genuinely one of the most beautiful maps ever made. One of my favorite aspects of this map is the trial system. Something that was really cool in Black Ops 4 is they actually used a unique trial system for each map. Of course, nowadays, they love to just have the exact same trial system on every map in a single game. Of course, we had the same trials, literally every single map in Black Ops 6, which I think gets kind of boring after a while, but Black Ops 4 changed it up a bit, where Togger Totem's trial system was this whole hermit challenge totem thing where you had to go to each individual totem and complete 3 different challenges for different rewards. And the challenges would be the exact same every time you play, the rewards would also be the exact same, but I do like how that created this interesting routine for the player where you knew which totem you wanted to focus on first because some of the totems are way better than others when it comes to the rewards, so you really want to make sure you're doing the right ones. You don't have to do all of them, of course only 2 of them are required for the main Easter egg, but if you want to do all 5 of them, you can, and you can get some pretty cool stuff out of it. The map has 3 wonder weapons, that being the Wunderwaffe Sniper, the Tundra Gun, and the Thunder Gun. And of course, these aren't the most unique wonder weapons out there. I mean, the Wunderwaffe Sniper is literally just a Wunderwaffe, but turned into a sniper that works a lot better when you get headshots on the zombies, so it's not really that unique, but it's a little different. Of course, the Thunder Gun is literally just a Thunder Gun, and then the Tundra Gun is just a snowy version of the Thunder Gun. And as much as I don't like the fact that they're reusing wonder weapons for the final Ether map of all time, I at least liked that they reused 3 instead of just 1, because sometimes you see a map like the Tomb in Black Ops 6 Zombies where they reuse a wonder weapon, but it's just 1 singular wonder weapon. Whereas with this map, you have 3 wonder weapons reused, and 2 of them are obviously quite different than ones we've seen before, only 1 of them is the exact same. And they're honestly pretty good. A lot of people say the Tundra Gun sucks, but I feel like people just aren't using it right because it's actually really amazing. And same with the Wunderwaffe Sniper, it's pretty useful, and I would say arguably even better than the original Wunderwaffe. It just depends how you're using it. You have to make sure you're getting headshots or else it's not going to do much. The Samantha's Box piece of equipment is pretty fun to use. It's definitely not as good as Wraith Fires. I feel like nothing's going to be better than Wraith Fires in this game, but it is really fun. You obviously have to use it for the Easter egg, so you're going to be using it a lot on this map, and it's really cool. The fact that you can throw down this box and Samantha just comes out of the ground and just destroys all the zombies around her, it's pretty cool. The side Easter eggs on this map are really good, my favorite being the Yellow Snowballs quest because the quest for it is actually quite fun to do, and the reward is pretty decent. They're actually pretty powerful. The heat pack is a really good buildable to get, helps you last longer in the water because of course this map has a ton of water sections that will freeze you if you're in it for too long. Now obviously Call of the Dead did this as well, but this map has a lot more sections with it, which I thought was pretty cool. And then there's also the round 200 side Easter egg, which Alpha Omega also had one of these, which I thought was pretty cool. By far the best map unique feature on this map is the Golden Pack-a-Punch machine. Every now and then, the Golden Pack-a-Punch machine will become available, and it will immediately fully upgrade your weapon all 5 times. Because of course, in Black Ops 4 Zombies, you had to pack-a-punch your gun 5 times in order to get it maxed out. But the Golden Pack-a-Punch machine, you literally put it in once for 5,000 points, and it will fully max out that gun. The Pack-a-Punch system was one of the biggest complaints with Black Ops 4, so it really makes a lot of sense why they decided to throw this feature in to Togger Totem. And like I said, it makes the map so much better. My biggest negative with this map though would have to be the Easter egg itself. Not the story elements of the Easter egg, I think the story is very good, but I don't really enjoy the gameplay of this Easter egg. There's a couple of fun steps like a lockdown, and the lava escort is pretty cool, but the majority of the Easter egg is just throwing snowballs at orbs, which is just kind of weird, and I don't like those really heavy fetch quest type main Easter eggs where you're just kind of going on the map looking for things, and that is 90% of this Easter egg. You have to redo do the step where you have to throw snowballs at orbs multiple times in this Easter egg as well. You also have to go on the map picking up meat at one point, which again, I just don't like those types of steps, especially when it's like the entire Easter egg. Having a couple steps like that's fine, but the entire Easter egg kind of gets old after a while. I'd much prefer to do puzzles and action steps, and this Easter egg just doesn't have as many of those as it should. I also think not having a boss fight was quite disappointing, and I know a lot of people say that they actually think it's kind of cool that the final map in the Ether storyline made it very focused on the zombies themselves. You're not fighting a big boss, you're just fighting a horde of zombies that comes at you while you're in that circle at the very end of the Easter egg. But I'm a sucker for boss fights. I think those are the most satisfying ways to end Easter eggs, and I really do think this map could have used one. I don't know what it would have been, but anything, literally anything, would have been better than not having a boss fight at all. I also think playing as Victus for the final Ether map was very, very weird. I liked seeing Victus come back. I thought that was awesome, but why were they on the final map? I feel like it would have made more sense to have them be playable on Alpha Omega and then have Togger be with Primus and Ultimus, because why would you end the Ether storyline playing as Victus? It just doesn't make a lot of sense. And so I never really understood that choice. I feel like it's one of the weirdest things about this map, even though I did like seeing them back. Overall, Togger was sort of an underwhelming map in some aspects, but it did so many other things right that it ends up being a pretty good map in retrospect. In the number 3 spot, the Frozen Dawn from World War II Zombies. This is by far one of the most underrated maps of all time. Almost nobody talks about it because almost nobody has played it. This was the final map of World War II Zombies, and when this map came out, Black Ops 4 was coming out very, very shortly after, so all the hype was surrounding that game. Nobody really cared about World War II anymore. This was also following the Tortured Path, which was by far one of the least successful DLCs for Zombies history, at least in terms of community reception, because people were really hating on the Tortured Path. Fortnite was also out at the time and was very popular, so most people were playing that instead of playing the Frozen Dawn, so a lot of people didn't even try it. But I'm here to say that the map is pretty good. It's actually quite underrated, and it took me time to actually get into it as well. I wasn't obsessed with it when it first came out, but over the years, I've started to like it more and more and more. The best thing about this map was the 4 melee wonder weapons. I love using these things. Overall, the melee weapons in World War II were really cool. They had a really good melee system. Not only did they have dedicated melee weapons, so you didn't have to take up one of your gun slots to use a melee weapon, but they also had really cool mechanics behind them where if you meleeed with your gun out, you would still melee with your dedicated melee weapon, which is something that doesn't happen in Black Ops 6 for some reason. But it's really fun and satisfying to use melee weapons in this game, so having 4 wonder weapons all based around being melee was really cool. First of all, there's the Thulian Scythe, which is in my opinion the best one. It's also the easiest to get, so most people just go for this one. They don't even bother getting the other ones. It's just that powerful. It absolutely shreds the zombies and has a ranged attack, which is pretty good too. The Thulian Hammer is really cool as well. It's actually the main way to getting to high rounds on this map. The Thulian Flail is one of my favorites because not only is it a really powerful knife, but there's also a little orb that you can throw and you can actually teleport to where you threw the orb. This is kind of similar to the teleport grenades from Exo Zombies, but it's really cool in wonder weapon form because you can keep recharging this orb, so you can constantly just use it to get around the map quicker, which I thought was really, really cool. Similar to the knife from the Shadowed Throne, you can actually use the flail to get extra armor as well, which is really useful in the boss fight. And lastly, there's the Thulian Shield, which personally is my least favorite because I don't like the attacks that much, but it is pretty useful to get away really fast from the zombies because there's a really useful charge attack on the shield. Definitely my least favorite, also my least favorite to get. I really don't like the quest for it, but that's okay. They can't all be great. The main thing I love about this map is the Easter egg. A lot of people don't like it because the entire Easter egg is just getting and upgrading the melee weapons, but in my opinion, it's so fun because of what the quests themselves are to get these. There's plenty of puzzles, lots of soul boxes, and a lot of parts around the map that you need to pick up, but I love the process of going through this map in the early rounds and trying to do each thing one at a time. I'm a big sucker for puzzles in Zombies, and especially the puzzles in this map are really, really good. I love the planet puzzle, trying to piece together where exactly the planets need to be on the structure. The pillar puzzle is really good as well. I'm a big fan of that one. The blood pool puzzle isn't as good as the other ones. It's kind of hard to tell what the symbols are in the blood pools, so it can get kind of frustrating, but that's the only step that I don't love in this Easter egg. Pretty much everything else is pretty incredible. The new special enemy, the Corpse Eater, is really fun to fight against. He runs around and sucks energy out of the zombies. It's kind of cool that they don't attack you directly, but they get more and more powerful as they do that. They're pretty easy to take out though. They're just really fast. This map probably has the best side Easter eggs in all of World War II Zombies. There's the Dark Room Perk-a-Cola Easter egg, which is quite a difficult Easter egg to do, but once you do it, of course, you get Perk-a-Holic, so it's obviously worth doing. There's also the Raven's Claw Revolver Easter egg, which gives you this really cool revolver that every time you shoot a zombie in the head, a raven will pop out of the zombie and attack other zombies. There's also the classic PPSH Easter egg on this map as well, which requires you to play this really difficult whack-a-mole game, like one of the hardest mini games on any zombies map ever, but it's pretty fun to do. And then there's the boss fight, which honestly, I really do love. It's one of the coolest boss fights ever. It's a pretty long boss fight, quite a lot of stages to it. The God King himself looks incredible. He's really terrifying. But the one thing that holds this boss fight back and really holds the whole map back is the fact that it is so easy to cheese this boss fight. Using the right setup and the right weapons, you can take him out within less than like a minute, and it's just way too easy to do that. I usually don't do that when I do the boss fight because I want to experience it how it's intended to be experienced, but just the fact that there is that cheesable method there does kind of diminish the overall difficulty of this boss, which does make it not as good. But overall, I don't have a lot of negatives for this map. I think it is a really solid zombies experience. I think the World War II mechanics work really well with it, and it's a map that I have a lot of fun playing. In number 2 spot, Revelations from Black Ops 3. The crazy thing about this is I do think this is the weakest map in Black Ops 3 out of the new maps, of course, not counting Zombies Chronicles, and yet I still think it's the second best DLC 4 map of all time. That just goes to show how incredible Black Ops 3 is as a whole. Each and every one of the new maps in that game is incredible. Revelations is a fantastic map. I love so much about it. For many years, people wanted to see a map like this that combines previous maps into one giant experience, and I was one of those people. I thought it would be a really cool thing to explore, and so when they first announced that that was what this map was going to be, I was excited beyond belief. And I do think they succeeded for the most part, but my only issue with how they went about it is that they didn't go far enough in many different places. For example, when it comes to bringing back old wonder weapons, they only brought back 2, that being the Apothicon Servant and the Thunder Gun. I feel like this map should have had like 5 wonder weapons from the past, because it would have felt more like it was actually succeeding what it's trying to do with being this massive sandbox of prior zombies content. And I get that they probably didn't want to have to make a bunch of wonder weapons specifically for this map. Even if they're reusing concepts from previous games, they would still have to make a whole new wonder weapon. But they did have Zombies Chronicles that they eventually made, and there's other wonder weapons in Black Ops 3. So honestly, I feel like this map should have reused even more. There should have been a Wonder Waff on this map. There should have been the baby gun, the wave gun from Moon. There's definitely a lot more they could have done, and I think that actually would have been really cool. I also would have loved to have seen a few more areas to the map as well. They did a pretty good job with that, but there definitely could have been at least one more island with a few other zombies maps. And fun fact, the developer documents that leaked a few months ago from Black Ops 3 actually shows that they did have a lot more planned for Revelations, including the bows from Der Eisendrock were supposed to return for this map. So that would have been pretty crazy, just the fact that they would have had so many more wonder weapons, so many more specialists as well. Apparently the specialists from Black Ops 3, the other maps, were supposed to return, not just the Ragnaroks. Clearly they wanted to do a lot more with this map, and I feel like if they went further with it, it could have been a much better map. Regardless, I really enjoyed the Apothicon Servant returning because they actually allowed you to upgrade it on this map, and it is a very powerful weapon, one of the best wonder weapons of all time. The Thunder Gun is fun to use on this map as well. Little Arnies are great. You can upgrade them on this map just like you could on Shadows of Evil, and they're really fun to use. There was a couple of new guns on the map like the Rift E9 and the Banshee, which were pretty cool. There were these energy weapons from the multiplayer that they carried over into Zombies. They even brought in the Tommy gun from Mob of the Dead to Revelations, which was really exciting. And by far one of the best parts of this map is how they handle the special enemies, because there are so many different special enemies on this map, but somehow they seamlessly flow with each other. There isn't a boss spam problem on this map at all, even though there's so many different special enemies. There's the Margwas, the Elemental Margwas, which by the way are probably my favorite special enemies of all time. The Margwas in general are really cool, but then you have elemental versions of them. Of course they're going to be amazing. The Panzer Soldat returns on this map as well. Parasites are on the map. Spiders are technically on the map, but they're only inside of the Apothicon itself. They don't spawn anywhere else on the map. And then there's the Furies and the Corrupted Keepers. So just so many different special enemies to fight against, but they all work with each other very, very well. And then by far my favorite part of Revelations has to be the masks and the helmets. This was already a thing that was on some of the previous Black Ops 3 maps where you can do a specific side Easter egg to get yourself extra abilities with these masks and helmets. But Revelations does it by far the best out of any map, where there's 7 different masks that you can get that gives you different abilities. And the abilities are basically upgraded versions of the perks. Like you can basically get upgraded Juggernog and Stamina up with these masks. There's the Wolf Head, there's the Margwa Head, the Fury Head, the Keeper Skull Head, the Viking Helmet, a Knight Helmet, and last but not least, the God Mask, which is by far one of the most overpowered things in Call of Duty Zombies history. When you have this on, you take 1 extra hit from all enemies, so basically it gives you upgraded Juggernog. Your sprint duration is increased even more than what you have with regular Stamina up. The player does 50% more damage against all enemies, giving you a massive damage increase against enemies. You get a 33% damage reduction from all enemies, which is insanely overpowered. That just gives you even more hits against all special enemies. And you also won't get stunned by the Panzer Soldat shock mines, and also you can't get stunned by the Void Margwa's flying skulls. And the quest itself to get this mask is really fun. You just have to kill a bunch of different special enemies inside of the Apothecon acid while there's gas filled all inside of the Apothecon. The quests for the other masks and helmets are fun as well, but this one is the one you really want to focus on because of how powerful that God Mask is. I just love it so much because it gives you something interesting to work for the entire time you're playing, and it is really rewarding. I would argue this might be the best side Easter egg of all time. The main Easter egg for this map is kind of hit or miss because there's a lot of steps I absolutely love. I love the step where you have to throw little Arnies into the different holes inside of the Apothecon, and then it spawns in a bunch of Margwas that you have to take out. That step's really fun. There's a really fun pre-boss fight section of the Easter egg where you have to do a bunch of different waves against a bunch of different elemental Margwas. That's also incredible. But I'm not a fan of the rock step. I don't think most people are a fan of it. It's kind of annoying having to look for these really tiny rocks that you have to shoot, and then you have to collect the bone with the Apothecon Servant. I just think it's kind of a weird step. It was obviously only like that to really make the hunt for the Easter egg a lot longer, which I do kind of like how long that hunt took. It was really fun, but the fact that the reason it took that long is because these tiny rocks were just impossible to see is kind of ridiculous. And I do think the boss fight itself after that pre-boss fight stage is kind of underwhelming. It's basically a copy of the Shadows of Evil boss fight, which wasn't that great to begin with. Story-wise, I do think this map was a little underwhelming in its ending, but I still enjoyed a lot of the quotes throughout the map, especially all of Dr. Monty's quotes. I quite enjoyed that aspect of it, but the ending cutscene was a bit underwhelming at the time. I love the soundtrack on this map though. It's got an incredible Easter egg song. The round change music changes depending on the area of the map you're in. There's a lot of nostalgic usage of older music here as well, which was pretty cool. So all in all, Revelations is a pretty fantastic map. One of my favorites of all time. Definitely within my top 15 at least. And in the number 1 spot is of course going to be Origins from Black Ops 2. This is not only the best DLC 4 map, but one of the best zombies maps of all time. It actually used to be my number 1 favorite for a long time. It's not anymore, but it's still within my top 3 for sure. This is by far one of the most innovative maps of all time because it really was the first time where zombies really felt like the quest was a big part of the map experience, which I know a lot of people don't like that. People preferred when the quest was kind of just like an optional side thing that you can do, but the main purpose of the map was to survive. And of course, that still was the case on Origins. You didn't have to do the Easter egg, but the Easter egg was more in your face in this map, and I actually like that because I am a fan of Easter eggs. So I like that so many of the map mechanics and the map features are built around the main quest in mind. There's so much micromanaging you have to do on this map and so many interesting strategies you can come up with in order to get across the map on as low of a round as possible because you want to get the staff before the Panzer shows up. That's one of the main goals of the early rounds, and I love utilizing the classic point system in order to try to do that. It's some of my favorite early rounds of any zombies map ever. You feel very vulnerable most of the time because the map is very tight, which makes the early rounds so engaging. From the moment you spawn in, you feel immersed and engaged into the story and the gameplay of this map. And of course, the quest stuff all leads to you getting the 4 elemental staffs, which are some of the best wonder weapons of all time, not only in terms of their power, but also in terms of how fun they are to use. Obviously, the ice staff is the one that everybody loves more than anything because it's the best for high rounding. But what I like about the ice staff is that it's actually not that great when it's not upgraded. So the upgraded version is by far the best staff, but when it's unupgraded, the other staffs are actually kind of better. So it's an interesting balance there. The wind staff is pretty good, not my favorite, but still pretty good. The lightning staff is definitely one of the weaker ones, but it's pretty good at taking out panzers. And then there's the fire staff, which I wouldn't say is the best, but I feel like it's the safest one to use. Like, it doesn't do anything that outstanding, but it usually protects me when I get cornered, whether it's the unupgraded version or the upgraded version. So even though it might not be the best for high rounding, I usually prefer using it just because of how safe it is to use. I love all the different quests to getting the staffs themselves. I know a lot of people don't like them because there's a lot of constant running back and forth, but I honestly don't mind that because it's kind of interesting to try and find the best and quickest paths to get around this map. One of the best maps to speedrun in my opinion is Origins. I've watched so many speedruns of this map. I've never really tried it myself, but it is very entertaining to watch people try and get around this map as quick as humanly possible. The Panzer Soldat is one of the best special enemies of all time, and of course, they were introduced on this map, and they are terrifying. When that first one shows up around round 8, it is always so difficult to deal with. Obviously, if you have a staff, it's real easy, but if you aren't at least somewhat set up by that point, you definitely are going to be in for some trouble. I really do love the 1-inch punch melee that you can get on this map as well through the chest challenges. The chest challenge system in general was really cool because this was the first map that had a trial system like that, where you can get free rewards by doing various challenges. They were the same every game. Of course, you can get double tap for free, you can get a free upgraded weapon, you can get a free max ammo, and then of course there's the 1-inch punch. And then like I said, the challenges are the same every single time. You do have to get the 1-inch punch for the main Easter egg, but in general, even when I just play for fun, I always go for this because of how powerful it is. And the quest for it is also pretty interesting, where you have to do 4 soul boxes around the map, but when the robots walk by, if they crush the area where you're filling the souls before you can finish it, you actually have to restart. So it's a pretty interesting thing where you have to wait till the robot walks by and then start filling the souls up, and you have to do it really quickly before the robot comes back. Which, speaking of the robots, that's another thing about this map that I absolutely love. The fact that you have these 3 giant robots walking through the map, and if you are in its path, it will stomp right on you. One of the most interesting, unique map mechanics of all time that really does set this map apart. This map also has the red dig sites side Easter egg, which allows you to get extra perk slots. I absolutely love this side Easter egg because as much as I love perk limits, I always like it when there's ways to get more. And this map has a very fun way to get more because it's actually quite difficult to find all the red dig sites. You really have to go on a bit of a scavenger hunt for it. And so you're not going to get all perks every single time you play. It's going to be definitely something that doesn't happen that often. Which means when it does happen, it is so rewarding. It's really, really a good feeling to have all perks on this map. This was the first map to introduce the zombie blood power-up, which is honestly one of my favorite power-ups ever. It basically just makes you invisible to zombies for a certain amount of time. And I think it's pretty cool that they made it so you actually have to use zombie blood in order to do a couple different steps from the main Easter egg, as well as for the red dig sites. Like, you actually need this power-up in order to get to the red dig sites. The dig sites in general was a really cool new system for zombies. The fact that you just have to find a shovel on the map and you can dig up all these different spots to get a bunch of rewards, including a golden shovel that gives you even better rewards, and then you can get the golden helmet that makes it so when the robot steps on you, it doesn't actually kill you. Just so many little things you can do on this map that makes it so replayable. I've always said that this is one of those maps where I never get bored of playing on it. I feel like every time I play it, there's always something I can do, and that makes it more exciting. There's quite a lot of unique weapons that they added to this map, including the MG08, as well as the Mauser pistol, which was the starting pistol for this map, which turns into the Boomhilda when you pack-a-punch it. I absolutely love it because, of course, I love the Mustang and Sally as well, but having a brand new starting pistol that has a really amazing pack-a-punched version that I would say rivals the Mustang and Sally was awesome. Aesthetically, this map is amazing as well. The fact that it takes place in 1918 during World War I with this whole steampunk feel to it. The visuals are out of this world. The soundtrack is incredible, one of the best in zombies history. And the story was getting really interesting at this point because they brought back the original characters, but a different version of them this time with Primus. This was the introduction to the Primus crew, which ended up being, in my opinion, the best crew in zombies history. The main Easter egg was also by far the best for its time. It was one of the only Easter eggs you can do solo at this point, so of course people were gonna like it, but I do like the steps a lot more than the Easter eggs that came before it. Of course, nowadays I wouldn't consider it even the top 5 best main Easter eggs, but when it came out, it was definitely the best. Quite literally the only complaint I have for this map is the Templar zombies turning off the generators, which also turns off the Pack-a-Punch machine. I don't love this aspect of this map, I can definitely do without it, but I actually don't hate it as much as I used to. I used to think this was a big problem with this map. Nowadays I'm like, whatever, it's a little objective you have to do every now and then, it's really not the end of the world. So I don't mind it as much as I used to, but it definitely is still a negative for the map, I would say. All in all, Origins is a masterpiece and is definitely one of the most important zombies maps ever made. And ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for my ranking of every single DLC 4 map in Call of Duty Zombies history. Let me know your guys' thoughts in the comment section down below. What is your ranking for every DLC 4 map? And let me know if you're excited for Black Ops 7 Zombies, because of course I am. I cannot wait to jump into that game, and we'll be doing many more rankings when that game releases. I will see you on my next one. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Peace out, everyone.